Good evening, all. I wish you all a very happy new year. This is the very first session of the year 2026. Let us begin this journey without any delay. Look at the first question. With reference to the secondary air pollutants, consider the following statements. The first statement says they are not emitted directly from the sources, but are formed in the atmosphere through the chemical reactions involving primary pollutants. Absolutely correct. The second statement says that the O3 means the tropospheric ozone, then the PAN and photochemical smog. They are examples of these secondary pollutants. Again, correct. The third statement says that the secondary pollutants are generally easier to control than the primary pollutants because their sources are well defined. No, that's not correct. They are in fact like more difficult to tackle, right? So the third statement is absolutely incorrect here. Question is which of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be A for Ahmedabad 1 and 2. So both these statements 1 and 2 are correct. Right now, let's move on to the explanation part. So look at the explanation why we picked up this question. So a third of Delhi's annual PM 2.5 load is made of these secondary pollutants. This is how they are formed, right? So an article was published in the Indian Express regarding the secondary pollutants. So you can see the examples of the secondary pollutants. So photochemical smog, PM, particulate matter, then PAN, then tropospheric ozone means O3. याद रखिएगा जो atmospheric level ozone है that is beneficial, but the ground level ozone is highly poisonous. Correct? So this was the reason why we picked up this question. Now let's move on to the next question. Which of the following countries is holding its first phase of elections under the military rule in 5 years? The correct answer here is Myanmar, right? So recently Myanmar conducted the first phase of its elections. तो म्यांमार में like military coup हुआ था somewhere in 2021 और तब से लेकर के अब तक के means 2026 तक के यहाँ पे इलेक्शंस कंडक्ट नहीं हुए हैं और जो भी डेमोक्रेटिक लीडर्स थे चाहे वो आंग सांग सूकी हो या फिर और भी डेमोक्रेटिक लीडर्स हो एनएलडी पार्टी के नेशनल लीग फॉर डेमोक्रेसी के सबको उठा करके प्रिजन में डाल दिया गया है राइट सो फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन 5 years म्यांमार कंडक्टेड इलेक्शंस So look at the explanation part. Myanmar holds first phase of elections under the military rule in 5 years. ये म्यांमार की military जो है उसका नाम है that is तात्मदा. Do remember this. And also remember that the 2008 military constitution of Myanmar, it reserves 25% seats for the military officials where in the parliament of Myanmar. So Myanmar की parliament में 25% seats किसके लिए reserved है? Defense personnel के लिए reserved है. Plus जो दो key ministries हैं जैसे Ministry of Defense means external security and then the Ministry of Home Affairs means the internal security. So both the ministries cannot be occupied by the civilians, right? These two ministries can only be occupied by the military officials, right? So now look at the map of Myanmar. So Myanmar forms its border with China, with India, with Bangladesh, with Laos, and with Thailand. Also remember that Tropic of Cancer passes through म्यांमार राइट तो इंडिया में टोटल 8 स्टेट से होते हुए ट्रॉपिक ऑफ कैंसर पास करता है साथ ही साथ में म्यांमार से भी पास करता है म्यांमार वाज प्रीवियसली नोन एज बर्मा प्लस बर्मा वाज सेपरेटेड फ्रॉम द ब्रिटिश इंडियन एम्पायर under the Government of India Act 1935 and this separation came into effect in 1937. So do remember these facts. Now let's move on to the next question. So question number 3, with reference to the PM Vishwakarma scheme, consider the following statements. The first statement says the PM Vishwakarma scheme was launched on 17th of September 2023 with a financial outlay of 13,000 crore rupees for the period of financial year 23-24 to 27-28. Absolutely correct. The next statement says the scheme is implemented only by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. The term only. Please be attentive. The second statement is incorrect here. Why incorrect? Because it is jointly implemented by the Ministry of MSME, the Ministry of Skill Development with close cooperation with the Ministry of Finance. Right? So which of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be only one. Now let's move on to the explanation part. So this scheme was launched by Prime Minister in 2023 and it is jointly implemented by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship and the Department of Financial Services which comes under the Ministry of Finance. Right? And here are the eligibility conditions. So इसको एक बार read कर लीजिएगा. Now let's move on to the next question. Indian government bond yields are influenced by which of the following? It's a previous year question. 2021 में आया था ये prelims में. So look at these statements. Actions by the United States Federal Reserves. Absolutely correct. See what happens. Let's suppose if the US Federal Reserve, if it increases the policy rates, what would happen? Actually इसकी वजह से जो डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज हैं जैसे इंडिया है, चाइना है, इन कंट्री से फंड्स का आउटफ्लो चालू हो जाएगा. किस तरफ? अमेरिका की तरफ. इसका सीधा इंपैक्ट बॉन्ड यील्ड्स पे पड़ेगा. So the first statement is absolutely correct. Second statement is actions of the Reserve Bank of India. अगेन करेक्ट. अगर यूएस फेडरल रिजर्व इंटरेस्ट रेट को स्पाइक करेगा, अगर इसको राइज करेगा, इसका बिल्कुल सेम आपको एक यहाँ पे रिएक्शन इंडिया में देखने मिल सकता है. तो यहाँ पे इंडिया में भी रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया क्या करेगा? आरबीआई वुड इंक्रीज द इंटरेस्ट रेट. तो यहाँ पे आरबीआई भी पॉलिसी रेट मतलब रेपो रेट को इंक्रीज करेगा, जिसका सीधा इंपैक्ट बॉन्ड यील्ड पे पड़ेगा. सो दिस इज इक्वली करेक्ट. द थर्ड स्टेटमेंट सेज इन्फ्लेशन एंड द शॉर्ट टर्म इंटरेस्ट रेट. इट इज इक्वली करेक्ट. व्हाई? Because the greater the inflation rate, the greater the demand for the bond yield, right? तो inflation rate अगर ज्यादा होगा तो जो investors होंगे वो ज्यादा bond yield की demand करेंगे. So this is equally correct. Select the correct answer using the code given below. So correct answer would be D for Delhi. So 1, 2, 3, all these statements are correct here. Now let's move on to the explanation part. The decisions by the US Fed affects the global liquidity, capital flow, the risk appetite, changes in American interest rates that influences the foreign portfolio investments in Indian bonds, thereby impacting the bond yields. RBI's repo rate decisions, open market operations, liquidity management, and communication. It directly influences the Indian government bond yields. Plus, the higher the inflation expectations, it leads to higher yields, which I have already explained. Right? So why we picked up this article? Because today on 1st of January 2026, an article was published in the Economic Times regarding the Indian bonds dip as supply fears carry into 2026. Right? Now let's move on to the next question. There is a statement made by a political leader. It must be capped out of unhealthy competition with political parties and communal bodies. For these and other similar reasons, the AICC, means All India Congress Committee, resolves to disband the exiting Congress organization and the floor into a Lok Sevak Sangh, society to serve the people. See, it was the political thought of Mahatma Gandhi. अब आपने जनरली सुना होगा like top brasses of BJP leaders को ये बात करते हुए that Mahatma Gandhi had a dream that he wanted Congress to be abolished, but that's not करेक्ट. महात्मा गांधी चाहते थे कि कांग्रेस का जो रोल है वो पूरी तरह से चेंज हो जाए. वो कांग्रेस को कंप्लीटली अबॉलिश नहीं करना चाहते थे. वो चाहते थे कि कांग्रेस किसका रोल स्टार्ट करे प्ले करना? एक बेसिक एक लोक सेवक संघ का. तो वो चाहते थे कि कांग्रेस लोगों की सर्विसेज करे, सोसाइटी के लिए जो है वो सर्विसेज अपनी रेंडर करे, ना कि वो पॉलिटिकल सर्विसेज में इन्वॉल्व हो. तो पॉलिटिकल सर्विसेज से कांग्रेस का कोई कनेक्शन ना हो, सिर्फ किससे कनेक्शन हो? सोशल सर्विसेज से कनेक्शन हो. इज दैट अंडरस्टूड? तो वो कांग्रेस का कंप्लीट डिमोल्यूशन नहीं चाहते थे, बस कांग्रेस की फंक्शनिंग और कांग्रेस के का जो रोल है वो उसको चेंज करना चाहते थे. Right? So correct answer would be Mahatma Gandhi. Now next one, look at the explanation part. These words are from Gandhi's draft resolution at the All India Congress Committee meeting of 1948, shortly before his assassination. Gandhi proposed that Indian National Congress should disband as a political party and transform into a Lok Sevak Sangh, a non-political body dedicated to constructive work, social services and nation building. Right? Let's move on to the next question. With reference to the western disturbances in India, consider the following statements. The first statement says they are extratropical low pressure systems originating in the Mediterranean region. Absolutely correct. Second statement says their eastward movement towards the Indian subcontinent is guided by the subtropical westerly jet stream. Again correct. The third statement says they are responsible for the bulk of rainfall over the peninsular India during the southwest monsoon season. It is absolutely incorrect. See, the western disturbance causes rainfall where? In the northern and the northwestern India, right? That affects the weather pattern of the north and the northwestern India, not the southern India. Clear? Southern India में जो rainfall होती है वो basically particularly like अगर हम तमिलनाडु की बात करें तो southern India में तमिलनाडु में जो rainfall होती है जो इसको हम winter rainfall कहते हैं, that is caused by the northeastern monsoon, right? लौटता हुआ monsoon या फिर retrieving monsoon, right? Now let's move on to the explanation part. Western disturbances are extratropical cyclonic system that originate in the Mediterranean region. Their movement towards India is controlled by the subtropical westerly jet stream, especially during the winters. Absolutely correct. Rainfall over the peninsular India during the southwest monsoon is caused by the tropical monsoon winds and not by the western disturbances. तो tropical monsoon winds जो है उसके थ्रू और वो भी particularly southwest monsoon के थ्रू साउथ इंडिया में रेनफॉल होता है. लेकिन अगर मैं विंटर रेनफॉल की बात करूं पर्टिकुलरली इन दी तमिलनाडु तो ये होता है नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न मॉनसून की वजह से, राइट? रिट्रीविंग मॉनसून की वजह से, राइट? नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. सो क्वेश्चन नंबर 7. With reference to the Dulhasti Stage 2 hydropower project, consider the following statements. The first statement says it is proposed on the Chenab River in the Kishtwar district of Jammu and Kashmir. Absolutely correct. The second statement says it involves diversion of the water from existing Dulhasti Stage 1 project through a separate tunnel to generate additional power. Again correct. The third statement says the project is being implemented by the Tehri Hydro Development Corporation, THDC. No, that's not correct. It is being implemented by NHPC, National Hydro Electricity Power Corporation, and not by the THDC. So question is, which of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be 1 and 2, means B for Bombay would be the correct answer. Now let's move on to the explanation part why we picked up this question. So recently, Centre's green panel gives nod or permission to Dulhasti Hydro Power Project on Chenab, right? 3,200 crore rupees का project है और इसका जो total strength है that is 260 megawatt, right? So Dulhasti stage 2 का जो strength है that is 260 megawatt. Clear? And it is located in the Kishtwar district of Jammu and Kashmir, the UT of Jammu and Kashmir. And it is implemented by NHPC and not by the THDC, right? Now let's move on to the next question. With reference to India, consider the following statement. अब basically हमने UPSC 2021 Prelims से question को pick किया हमने. So look at the first statement. When a prisoner makes out a sufficient case, parole cannot be denied to such prisoners because it becomes a matter of his or her right. No, it is not a legal right. It is actually the state's discretion. तो भले ही आपके पास में payroll के genuine grounds हो, आपके पास में legitimate grounds हो, despite this, a state can deny your payroll. So the first statement is incorrect here, right? अब यहां देखिए किस तरह का statement था. Payroll cannot be denied. Absolute statement है. So be attentive. Look at the second statement. State governments have their own prisoners released on payroll rules. Absolutely correct. Why? Because prisoners की बात करें, prisoners management और जो prisons हैं ये बेसिकली स्टेट सब्जेक्ट में आता है 7 शेड्यूल के, राइट? एंड ईच स्टेट हैज इट्स ओन प्रिजनर लॉज. सो डू रिमेंबर दिस. So question is, which of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be only 2. So B for Bombay would be the correct answer because A is statement number 1 is incorrect here. Now let's move on to the explanation part. Payroll is not a matter of right, illness, death in family or other exigencies subject to rules and satisfaction of the competent authority. So courts have consistently held that payroll is a concession and not an enforceable legal right. राइट जैसे अभी आपने देखा होगा चाहे वो बाबा राम रहीम हो या फिर वो लाइक आशाराम बापू हो, तो बहुत सारे ऐसे इस तरह के क्रिमिनल्स हैं जो ऑलरेडी कन्विक्टेड हैं और जिनको पेरोल दी जा रही है. और ये जो पेरोल है ये कहीं ना कहीं इसमें डिस्क्रिमिनेशन देखने मिल रहा है. इस तरह के जो प्रिजनर्स हैं उनको लाइक काफी ज्यादा फ्रीडम, काफी ज्यादा रिलैक्सेशन दे दिया गया है. इस वजह से यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था. ये स्टिल रेलेवेंट है क्योंकि आप देख रहे हैं देयर इज अ ट्रेंड, सच पॉलिटिकल प्रिजनर्स और सच रिलीजियस प्रिजनर्स दे हैव बीन गिवन पेरोल. और यहाँ पे जो पेरोल है उसको देते समय कहीं ना कहीं जो स्टेट है वो बाइज्ड है, राइट? नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. सो क्वेश्चन नंबर 9. विद रेफरेंस टू द ब्रिक्स ग्रुपिंग, कंसीडर द फॉलोइंग स्टेटमेंट्स. द फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट सेज इंडिया विल होल्ड द प्रेसिडेंसी ऑफ ब्रिक्स फॉर द ईयर 2027. नो, दैट्स नॉट करेक्ट. इंडिया will hold the presidency of BRICS for the year 2026, not 2027. So first statement is incorrect here. The group has 11 members. This is absolutely correct. The third statement says for the BRICS presidency, India is going to follow the model of its 2023 G20 presidency and take the meetings and delegations to all the states and UTs. This is equally correct. So how many of the above statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be B for Bombay. Only 2 statements are correct here. Now let's move on to the explanation part. India will hold the BRICS presidency for the year 2026, not 2027. The second statement is BRICS currently has 11 members, right? So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, UAE, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Iran, right? And you can see the official website of the BRICS countries. You can see here, it is the official website of BRICS. It is a group formed by 11 countries. These are the 11 countries. So we picked up this strength from where? From the official website of BRICS. Now let's move on to the next question. So look at the question number 10. With reference to the eco-sensitive zones in India, consider the following statements. The first statement says, eco-sensitive zones are area notified by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change around the protected areas like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Absolutely correct. The second statement says, the eco-sensitive zones are meant to act as a transition zone and shock absorbers for the protected areas. Again, correct. The third statement says the extent of an eco-sensitive zone is fixed at 5 kilometers around the protected area. No, it is up to 10 kilometers, right? It is not fixed as 5 kilometers. So third statement is wrong here. Why? Because it can extend up to 10 kilometers, not 5 kilometers. So 5 kilometers fixed nahi hai. So third statement is incorrect here. The fourth statement is activities like commercial mining and major constructions are regulated or restricted in ESZs, eco-sensitive zones. Absolutely correct, right? So the fourth statement is correct here. Now the question is, which of these statements given above is oblique are incorrect? अब यहाँ question क्या पूछा है? Incorrect. So only one statement is incorrect here. Which one? The statement number 3. So statement number 3 is incorrect. So correct answer would be B for Bombay. Means only 3 would be the correct answer here. Generally what happens, कैंडिडेट्स यहाँ पे मिस्टेक करते हैं, वो बहुत लाइक फ्लो में चले जाते हैं. उनको लगता है कि एक करेक्ट यहाँ स्टेटमेंट पूछा हुआ है, और अगर इस तरह से अगर हम देखें तो यहाँ पे आप 1 3 4 लगा के 1 2 4 लगा के आप आ जाते. ऑल्दो यहाँ पे ऑप्शन नहीं है, लेकिन अगर यहाँ पे ऑप्शन होता 1 2 एंड 4 और अगर कैंडिडेट्स उसको लगा देते तो वो गलत हो जाता. इसलिए आपने नोटिस किया होगा कि जब भी मैं एक्सप्लेन करता हूं, सो व्हाट आई डू, आई जनरली इनसर्कल द डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन लाइक इज करेक्ट और इनकरेक्ट, right? So that's a good habit. Now let's move on to the explanation part why we picked up this question. So there's a strong reason. Government declares Parvati Arga Bird Sanctuary as the eco-sensitive zone. So government has declared the Parvati Agra Bird Sanctuary of Uttar Pradesh as an eco-sensitive zone, right? So in a social media post, the Minister of State for Environment, Forest and Climate Change said that through this initiative, the government is working to develop it as a responsible ecotourism destination and strengthen its biodiversity, right? So do remember, certain activities like mining or large scale construction are restricted to protect the ecosystem. Clear? Now let's move on to the next question. This is the last question of today's session, dosto. India rolled out Operation Sagar Bandhu, delivering the first batch of relief material transported by the Indian Navy's aircraft carrier INS Vikrant and the frontline ship INS Udaygiri to which country? To Sri Lanka, right? To Sri Lanka. So correct answer here would be D for Delhi. Now look at the explanation part why we picked up this question. So you can see here, Operation Sagar Bandhu was launched in late November 2025 in response to Cyclone Ditwa that caused extensive damage in Sri Lanka. The mission included delivery of supplies, medical aid, engineering support, right, and personnel. It involved both the Indian Air Forces and the Indian Navy, reflecting India's humanitarian outreach and regional strategic support in Indian Ocean region. I hope you guys understood. So this was the last question of today's session. हम मिलेंगे अपने next session के साथ दोस्तों. Bye bye, take care, जय हिंद.